Hello, everybody. Happy Ghost Spider release day. Welcome to Snap Take. I'm Glazer of the Snap Judgments podcast, and today I've got not one, not two, but three Ghost Spider decks for you. Before we get there, though, I'd like to reiterate that we are the official podcast of Marvel Snap Zone right now, and with that, we have a certain number of things. First and foremost, if you would like to find my decks, you go over to Marvel Snap Zone and you just Marvel Snap Zone -users Pulse Glazer, and you'll scroll down a little bit and you'll see decks. See how it says decks right here? When you click decks, you can find all of my decks for your use. In addition, we'll be writing some articles on Marvel Snap Zone. You can find this Sleeper Decks of the Week, which is all of the decks I covered on this series of videos last week. And in addition, we have once a week, we'll have a weekly roundup. The logic to the weekly roundup might not be for everyone watching this video, but if you don't keep up with the day-to-day happenings of Marvel Snap, but you want all the news in one simple place, that's what this article is for. This article is going to make sure that you have everything important that happened in the game, what won tournaments, what second dinner has released, what the new card is, all the decks for the new card, everything you could possibly need in one spot once a week. Finally, our friend Safetyblade every single week releases his new card guide. See, Safetyblade? And this is the Ghost Spider strategy guide. I've been talking about these decks forever because #safety is a genius, the best deck builder in the game that you don't always think about. So every week, I'm going to pick one of the decks from this article to talk about. I'm also going to have other key decks for the new card every single week. This is my favorite deck from the article. This is Safety Spider. It is a bounce deck that is running Ghost Spider as another way to move. The gist of this deck is really, really simple. The real top end card in terms of cost in this deck is Doctor Strange, and that's just like the coolest thing in the world, right? Because Miles is almost always going to end up costing one because of Cloak, Ghost Spider, Strange, and Ice. The basic idea is to get either Human Torch or Kitty Pryde, and sometimes Dagger, going as a bounce target. Human Torch gets dragged all over the board. It gets massive amounts of power. If he costs 0, so much the better. Kitty Pryde is obviously one of the strongest cards in the game right now. Bouncing back and forth can become extremely high power. Dagger, in addition, moving back and forth is another way to win lanes. You add the power of both Kraken and Angela to this as cards that sit on the board and gain power when things either move to them or are played on them, and you're really, really cooking. Finally, on the last turn of the game, hopefully you have a really powerful, really cheap Human Torch, a really powerful, really cheap Kitty Pryde, and one or two other cheap cards. For example, say the Season Pass card Ghost Spider, along with Hit Monkey, right? Even without having beasted, if you have Human Torch, Kitty Pryde, Ghost Spider, and Hit Monkey, that's a lot of power for that last turn. That's 6 mana for an awful lot of power on that last turn. So your Hit Monkey will be 2, 4, 6, right? Human Torch, assuming that he has never been otherwise dragged, is going to be 4. Ghost Spider is 3, and Kitty Pryde is as big. In addition, you'll be able to play these again on cards like Angela, move them into cards like Kraken. If you can move a Dagger, play a Cloak the turn before. Drop a Miles. This deck is so cool and so powerful. The only card I'm not totally sold on here is Doctor Strange. I worry a little bit about Doctor Strange. You really, really, really want Torch to be a thing you pull. That shouldn't be impossible to pull off here, but it will occasionally be challenging. Strange is the only card I have any real concern with. I think everything else in this deck has a lot of power and a lot of consistency. This deck's obviously weak to both Wave and Killmonger. You should be able to throw priority enough to be Killmonger unless they're doing the Invisible Woman trick, but Wave is just going to get you with this deck. So be careful with that. But short of that, this deck should be really, really strong against almost everything. This is one of the first ones I'm going to try. Our next deck for today. Everyone knows Molt. Molt is one of the 3 or 4 biggest creators in the game. Molt has sold himself as the Move Master. He may be the Move Master, but he's not the only one. Kraken Null, friend of the show, hits infinite with move, every single season. I'm going to tell you straight up, Kraken is infinite from last season, right? And has spent the last whatever amount of time basically just playing Diablo 4 since it came out. So I had to bug him and be like, come on, send me the move list, send me the move list, send me the move list. So this is the move list he's going to play. A lot of the plays are obvious here, right? You want to use the same lower end Human Torch, Iron Fist, Dagger, Craven, Cloak to gain power, with Miles to capitalize on the moves as a really high power card. Um, Ghost Spider helps you move things. Jeff is an extra move. Nice and simple. Vulture is one more big card to move. Vulture might actually be better than Doctor Strange in that previous deck. It's close enough to be worth testing. The real extra trick for this is that you can do all of this early game to get ahead. And if you have successfully done so, on turn 5, you can play one of the following combos. You can wave with a cheap Miles. You can wave with a cheap Torch. You can wave Iron Fist and Human Torch. You can, if you played Human Torch or Vulture the turn before, Ghost Spider, and then at that point your opponent will only have one card, and you choose between Heimdall and Magneto as your finisher. This is so cool and so powerful. Please don't feel you have to play Heimdall. Magneto on that last turn is going to very often be great and just as, if not more powerful. Also, learn to read your opponent's decks. Excuse me. A lot of decks right now are running Killmonger. You're particularly looking at Killmonger in Sarah decks is obviously one of the main homes. And if you see an Invisible Woman, where Invisible Woman doesn't quite seem to fit right now, that's very often hiding Killmonger. And lastly, Lambie, gotta love Lambie, has in his Lockjaw deck a Killmonger to handle this. So be careful of stacking up Human Torch too much if you feel like you're facing one of those decks. At that point, you might want to alter your plan to really pump up either Dagger or Vulture to be your extra power. That is this one. Lastly, we have Move Shuri up. This is my version of fundamentally the bounce deck. I want options. I want things to do. So basically, we've got Human Torch or Dagger as our move targets and Kitty again. But late game, we're playing something different. The other deck just wants a bounce, bounce, bounce. This deck wants to bounce, 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 and then basically fundamentally play Shuri into Human Torch and then drop Taskmaster. Or play Shuri into Kitty and drop Taskmaster. These are both really great plays around turn 4, 5, 6. Don't feel like you have to Shuri, though, because you will very often read that there's a wave and you want to play 2 cards toward the end of the game. Wave is obviously going to stop that. That's what Magic is for. When you play Magic that way, you can just pass 5 and play a giant combo of cards. You could play, for example, on turn 7, if you're skipping 6, Shuri, Iron Fist, Human Torch, and Kitty. You can ditch one of those cards and end up playing Ghost Spider on top of Human. All of that with a free She-Hulk. Shuri and Magic have anti-synergy, so be careful with them. But you have to just plan what you're going to do in it. Lastly, the obvious play, the classic Shuri play, if you need it, is always here, of Shuri, skip 5, She-Hulk, Taskmaster. That's not usually your play line with this deck, but this deck has so many play lines and so many powerful things it can do with its 2 different ways. The one card I'd really like to fit here that I couldn't is Vulture, but I feel like basically everything else here works together and has absolutely stellar synergy. Don't be afraid to drop a late Cloak. Turn 4, turn 5 Cloak is often going to provide you a crazy amount of power later in the game where you know what your opponents are playing. The only card you don't really want to draw late, I guess you don't want to draw Magic on 6, but the only other card you don't really want to draw late is Kitty. Everything else offers valuable synergy pieces. All right, that is our 3 opening day Ghost Spider decks. I hope you enjoy. Try them out and let us know how it goes. I think that Ghost Spider is going to be a really cool, if not fully meta-defining, really powerful season pass card, and I hope you enjoy checking it out. Also, head over to not only Marvel Snap Zone, as we showed you earlier, but the Marvel Snap Zone YouTube, our podcast with The wonderful Educated Collins should be up any minute. So double check that podcast. I think you'll really enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching. See you tomorrow for another Snap Take.